Alright, it has been a minute since I've done any of these types of videos, and this is going to be the first video on the new channel, or at least it should be. So, this is Total Warhammer 3 What's Next, apparently. Now, supposedly this will be information about the next DLC, Ogre Kingdoms, Greenskins, Khorne. 17 minutes is a lot to be talking about that. I don't know what else is going to be going on here. Or a lot of people probably associate when Creative Assembly drops a video that says, what's next? That means the end of the game. Going off of Three Kingdoms. So, who knows here? I have not watched a second of this. I do not know what is going to be said. So, and I guess I could say, really quick, I'm really hoping for... I mean, it's going to be probably a cool DLC no matter what. Ogre Kingdoms and Greenskins are both quite nice. For Greenskins, I'd love to see either the Mangler Squig, the Gaba Squig, or Forest Goblin, the big Spider Riders. They're the monstrous cavalry-sized Spider Riders. That'd be cool. And if they say that development is over on Warhammer 3, I would say, hey, you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't mind too much if the modders just took over. Not to say that I think Creative Assembly has done too bad of a job on Warhammer 3 in the past year and a half or so. I think they've been doing a good job turning it around. But a lot of what I want out of Total War Warhammer is not really feasible for Creative Assembly to do themselves anymore. Stuff like Nippon, Karash, Kingdoms of End, stuff that Creative Assembly can't really touch. That Games Workshop would have to make up lore for, and Games Workshop doesn't want to make up anything for. But nonetheless, with that tangent all said, I'm always excited to see a Lord pack. Even Shadows of Change, you know, the price was a bit hefty, but especially by the end, once they added all the extra content, I still think Shadows of Change wound up being a good DLC. So, suppose, let's go ahead and see what's going on here. And yes, I know I look a bit rough. I literally just woke up.
I'm Steve Coleman, Senior Community Manager here in the Total War team, and I'm here today to talk to you.
Let me turn down that volume.
Some of the development team, wonderful developers here. Look at these people, beautiful faces. About the what's next for Total War Warhammer 3, as well as a little look at the future vision for the franchise as well.
Now I wonder if
more open and transparent with
okay, so they said they're trying to be more transparent. So I do find that funny because just recently, one of the devs on Rome 2, who had his face exposed in a video, had to make a article explaining why he was not responsible for a lot of mistakes in Rome 2 that people blamed him for, simply because he was a face that you saw in one of these videos. So I find it funny that after that, they're nonetheless making a video very proudly showing off several developer faces.
Let's do some introductions. So, Rich,
though I do think Warhammer 3 and the current state is a very different situation from Rome 2.
I'm the game director for the Total War Warhammer series. I've been doing this for quite a while now, at least the last 10 years or so. It's crazy how time's flown by.
Yeah, let's just skip past the introductions here.
We've been working together, so I'm here.
And get a drink of Arizona.
Collaboration going forward on Warhammer.
So we'll jump in with a big question. What is the vision and ethos for Total War Warhammer 3 moving forward?
Well, I think a lot of that...
So this is going to be not so much concrete DLC information. It's going to be talking about the general direction of the game they have planned. Okay, well, in that case, if this is interesting stuff to talk about, I'll still upload this video. If nothing interesting is said, I'll probably edit this down to anything that's actually interesting or important.
Important and impactful feedback over, well, I mean, since I've started on the project way back, but more recently, you know, your thoughts on Thrones of Decay. So what we want to do is continue in that mold, continue in that shape, and keep providing you the opportunity, the variety, the options of how you want to purchase Warhammer content moving forward. And that
so this one's going to be modular again, where you can buy each of the things on a racial basis.
Or the complete bundle, as you saw also with Thrones of Decay. The big news, if you like, also is that you've shown us where the importance of the game is, and that is clear from the amount of campaigns you started and battles you fought, the rest of it, it's Immortal Empires. So our next DLCs will be focused on IE specifically.
Really?
New characters and our factions.
And that doesn't mean
Immortal Empires focus in particular.
There will be a lot of bug fixing, a lot of rebalancing, a lot of making sure all the factions are still great there. But we figured out that after a while, the story of Realm of Chaos, after you played it so many times, kind of becomes, known to you. So we're moving to.
Well, Warhammer 2, all throughout its development, was kind of notorious for the fact that several of the DLCs they released were great in the Vortex campaign and kind of iffy in the Mortal Empires campaign. So that's interesting to see. I do think that it's more understandable to leave behind Realms of Chaos compared to Vortex. Realms of Chaos has a lot more annoying campaign mechanics. And on top of that, the campaign map for the Realms of Chaos is really messed up. It's really ugly.
Yeah, go on. Go on. Sean's got all the juicy gossip at the end. Right, so Ogre Kingdoms, that's a faction we wanted to touch and improve upon for quite some time. And we're here now, and we're really excited at what we're going to be able to do and bring and flesh them out. Because again, if I look,
I actually don't think the Ogre Kingdoms have that bad of a campaign, personally. But I may be more sentimental, because Greasus was the only Realm of Chaos campaign I beat.
So I'm really pleased to announce today that our new legendary lord for the Ogre
Is
Kingdoms
Goldfig Maneater. I had that entirely predicted.
He's a big hitter. He's one that's steeped in lore.
Are they going to just reveal all the content and not in a trailer?
Victor. This guy goes way back as well, and there's in a variety of different editions, and even the Dogs of War army. But
okay, we're seeing stuff in gameplay.
Is that he loves to roam the world. He loves to go to far-flung places. Been given sort of contracts and things to go and do for people. And if you've got a bag of cash, he's more than happy to take it in bolstering out his forces.
Go around the world, try different cuisine, everything incredible.
Exactly.
So, of course, Goldfig is going to be built around wandering the world and doing, presumably, a much stronger contract system for him than for other ogres.
Talk to you a little bit about some of the units that would be added in as well for the ogres.
So we know we're going to get Yetis in the Thunder Tusk.
And in fact, one of them is very cool,
the Thunder Tusk. There we go.
Thunder Tusk. So that's going to have a breath effect on it,
which is going to reuse a lot of the Stonehorn effects.
Mounted up high, shooting harpoons in the light. So a big beastie in your army to really flesh things out. There will be some other units as well, just like we've seen.
Looks nice.
Thrones of Decay. So you can expect that same shape and format again. And the other one, which, if I'm allowed, I'll talk about it now, is
the Blood Vultures. Okay, there's a lot of speculation about them.
Come to expect, because it's not a unit in the lore per se, but it's a feature.
The Blood Vultures, I myself was wondering, the Blood Vultures, I mean, they couldn't go entirely off of the Ogre Kingdom's army book here, because there simply aren't enough units. They already have so much of the Ogre Kingdom's roster in-game right now. They even had to make up, the Rhinox Riders, or... Well, I guess that was kind of a compromise because... Well, no, I don't think Rhinox Riders were ever a thing in any of the army books. They were introduced in White Dwarf before the Mournfang Riders were. So, either way, yeah, they've already gone beyond the armor book. And the Blood Vulture I definitely thought about it before, but I'm not far from the first to think about it. It's noteworthy in that it's a flying unit for Ogre Kingdoms, and I don't think Ogre Kingdoms has a flying unit up until now. So, and it's probably going to be fairly cheap. So, they might end up replacing Saber Tusks if they're cheaper than Saber Tusks.
For the Ogre Hunter, we wanted to give the Ogres that kind of aerial capability, so they'll be joining the fray as well.
Very cool. Very cool.
And they can reuse the Carrion
Tell us a bit about
animation skeleton from the Tomb Kings.
You know what's coming. You've been requesting it in the
So they're only showing 2 units for each of the races and gonna leave the remaining 3.
The case for us to want to do
Skull Taker, okay, yeah, Skull Taker's a cool pick.
We know that there's only one legendary ward in the game right now for Khorne. Of course, the second one will bring much needed variety. So this is.
I personally prefer Skullbringer to Arbal the Undefeated.
Do him justice. Portray him the way he is in the lore, which
Skullbringer, a Skull Taker can sometimes do interesting things as a character. Whereas Arbal the Undefeated, when your gimmick is just that you don't lose, that's pretty lame.
interesting, he adds them to his collection. He adds them to their.
So,
packs,
Skull
player,
Taker,
which
his
also
mechanic
adds
is
to
going
his
around
power.
collecting interesting
So when he
skulls.
defeats a really powerful enemy, the way he does in a challenge, he goes and issues a challenge. People come to, answer that call.
So I'm going to assume he's got something similar to the old Greenskin Wall, where he wants to fight stronger targets to get better skulls.
The enemy, supposedly the stronger the power that he absorbs. So we can see how this could lead to some sort of more snowballing gameplay. Perhaps you don't need to be an experienced game designer like those two to imagine what the gameplay will be like. We'll be adding a few new units to Khorne as well. Heroes Wars you could expect.
Slaughter Brute.
For example, there will be a great monster that Sean can tell you a bit more about.
Yeah, so we've got the Slaughter Brute on the way.
That's
so
what I thought.
We've obviously seen the Mutila Vortex Beast, so we did Shadows of Change, and we thought, well, we need to get the less magical and mystical and far more bloody.
I'd like to see that in gameplay, though.
Aggressive and
See it move around.
traits and a big beastie. So we're bringing.
Because the Vortex Beast has a very has the tentacles drawing your eye. So I'd be curious to see the body of it now with a less tentacly head.
Now at Khorne. Don't worry, Slanesh fans, we'll get to you as well. It's all in our great plan. Victor's going to have a lot of fun painting the town red with this.
Yeah, we want to do them all. We've read the books. Games Workshop has given us so much throughout the years, and if it's up to us, we'll do it all. It's just a matter of in what order, so you could definitely help us prioritize that with your, talking to us.
Sean, are you going to tell us a little bit?
Oh, Slaughter Brute's the only thing we're going to be hitting for Khorne. Okay.
Just a little
How long
bit.
is left in this video?
Just a tiny
We're about halfway through. Okay. Curious what else they'll talk about here, because the greenskin stuff they'll probably get out of the way. But greenskins, nonetheless, I'd love to see a Forest Goblin Legendary Lord. I don't think we're getting a Forest Goblin Legendary Lord. We're probably getting another Orc, because Orcs are big and manly and they sell DLCs.
Tiny bit.
crumb. Okay.
Yeah.
So the
That's enough.
great. Thanks, guys. So since Rich and Victor have told us that the legendary lords are for the other cultures, we're looking at Gorbad Iron.
Yep, there you go.
Goblins as our big hit.
That's
one of the most iconic and successful.
That's
ever
probably, for my 2 cents, that's probably the lamest greenskin legendary lord they could have chose.
Feedback on Thrones of Decay
Hmm.
that having the units in the roster feel attached to the lord that is representing them in the DLC is super important. So like Elspeth representing Lenore, etc. So with Gorbad, we thought
I'd prefer that they not worry about thematicness with the DLC. Legendary lords matching the units, but at the same time, Gorbad doesn't have much that matches him thematically. So who knows what kind of weird units they're going to be trying to introduce here and using Gorbad to just simply explain their presence. Be weird if they added more boar cavalry, because that's Gorbad's only real character trait he has, other than being the biggest orc in history, is that he rode a boar. So,
he's the perfect character to let us bring in a variety of orcs and goblins, because there's a sprinkle of orc and a sprinkle of goblin and a little bit of squig over here, and who can unify them?
Okay, so that it's
The single
okay.
best commander
It's
that
just an
actually
excuse
used
for
strategy
so
to
we can throw in whatever
unify
units we
these
want.
Squigs, use orcs and goblins all in conjunction. He's the perfect poster boy, poster orc, so that we can get the best and most exciting roster in, and some colossal beasties maybe on the journey there with him as well.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun with them. We know that greenskins and orcs and goblins are in a really good state at the moment, thanks to your feedback. We've still got a few little tweaks and fixes we want to do.
Yeah, I'd like to see the wall of mechanics. I'd like to see a lot of greenskin mechanics changed. I personally don't find them very interesting.
There's so much variety in this faction that we really want to try and get as much of this to you as soon as possible. So, maybe along the way there might be a few little sneaky surprises as well that we can drop for you.
Nice.
Are they going to do a trailer, or is it just going to be that this is the announcement of the DLC?
A big question that comes up whenever we do DLC, as I'm sure you're aware, is free content. Now, we have our process where we always release some free LC alongside the DLC. What's the approach going to be with the next one?
This might be a silly question, but I'm wondering if the DLC is actually pretty far off. August or September, relatively speaking, and not July, where usually when they announce a DLC, especially a Lord Pack, it comes out the next month. I'm wondering if this is actually a few months early of a reveal just to try and get ahead of Legend of Total War's fake leaks, where he said all that nonsense about the rest of Warhammer 3's development being devoted to Cathay and only Cathay. Was this one of those instances? Were they just trying to get ahead of the rumor mongers and nonsense? Suppose it's, guess we'll see if they say when the DLC will release.
Fun. What are we able to talk about? What we've got coming?
Yeah, I think so. So
No concrete
we
statements
went
about
back
any
and
overhauls to
looked
any of the
at
races so
Legends
far.
UK. It was quite clear that we needed to add legendary laws back in. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of people still enjoy legendary heroes and they have their place, and we're still looking to continue with those. But legendary laws provide you that new experience. You know, you get to have a fresh.
That is the thing. You could tell Kriv simply wanted to hold off a little bit on adding more legendary lords to the campaign map, because the Immortal Empire's campaign map is getting way too full. But free LC legendary heroes just don't provide the same value to people. So, once people get used to being provided a certain degree of free content, they get pretty upset when the free content that they're provided doesn't have that quality of replayability or that much kind of game-changingness, if I can speak properly this early from when I woke up. Whereas a free LC Legendary Lord, that changes the game quite a bit. They usually play the game quite differently from everyone else. And many times, the free LC Legendary Lord winds up becoming the provider for the campaign that many veterans are the most interested in, because there's been plenty of times in over Warhammer 2's releases that the free LC Legendary Lord had the most difficult campaign. And that's going to be something a lot of series vets would be interested in. Nonetheless, I'm going to bet the free LC Legendary Lord we get is Khorne. Maybe Ogre Kingdoms, but I think Khorne's more in need. Because, there's only going to be 2 Legendary Lords, even with the addition of Skull Taker.
Take on things. And Epidemius, I think, was one that we all enjoyed making, and just a little twist on what he could offer. So the focus again with this content, and as we touched on earlier, with the content going forward, is Immortal Empire. So you can expect to see the character appear there. And one to get Victor very excited about is gets yet another.
Okay, so it's a Khorne character. That makes sense. So it's going to be Khorne Legendary Lord number 3.
Khorne on this one. We really want to make sure that Khorne, gets to have its moment in the spotlight. And again, as I mentioned earlier, don't worry if you've got other factions that you want to see some attention to. They are going to get their time in the sun.
Very cool. I look forward to seeing the.
It's dangerous to promise if you have a faction, don't worry, they'll get their time in the sun. Because people are going to be generous in their interpretation of that. And be rather mad if Warhammer 3 ends without, let's say, the dwarfs getting another DLC or something like that.
Guesses and speculation across the community soon.
Please,
yeah. Awesome. So we've spoken a lot about this current content, what we're working on now, this newly announced DLC. Is there anything you can tell us about the plan moving forward for future DLCs?
Well, plan moving forward for future DLCs.
The feedback that we've had from everybody has been super useful in kind of getting us on the right path, and I think giving you the content that you want to see and experience in the game. So very much like what we've.
So this is at least partly still them trying to cover up for Shadows of Change, isn't it? And the controversy around it.
First and foremost, all those Chaos.
So it's of course Slaanesh next.
So you can expect to see Slaanesh in the future, but also the shape and mold as well to continue in this same vein. So offering the 3 different factions, 3 different.
I do think this 3 Lord pack idea is a good idea to stick with for a while. So far, these DLCs have been pretty cute. I also think that in terms of race packs, what Crave Assembly can do is effectively at an end, because it's Dogs of War is the only option they have left. And I don't see their Dogs of War. I don't see Dogs of War as a race being all that interesting. If Dogs of War was a selection of mercenary units, and every race had access to at least part of the Dogs of War pool of units, that'd be really cool. But as a race, I don't see them being that interesting. And on top of that, that overlaps with Cataf's Southern Realms. And Cataf Southern Realms, I'd really prefer to see it preserved as a mod. It offers a kind of unique experience that's still... It's very tall instead of wide in strategy game speak. And that's very unique for Total War Warhammer. That it's not super expansionistic, at least not at first. Plus, the roster is very tight, very well balanced.
Out, the units and heroes and things offer in that regard. So, yeah, that variety that you've all given us so much positive feedback on, we want to keep harnessing and creating and moving forward with. And then beyond that, well, the Warhammer world's our oyster, so to speak.
It really isn't.
There's lots and lots of content still out there. There's factions that we haven't touched upon in quite some time, and it's kind of a reason for that. So,
vampire counts are gonna get something. I think that the Slaanesh DLC would probably be best for it to be Slaanesh, vampire counts, and then for the third, either Norsca or Bretonnia. I'd say Norsca needs more love than Bretonnia does, but Bretonnia's roster being as relatively small as it is only going to look goofier and goofier with every other race that gets DLC. Though Norsca, I think, should get first priority. The only issue I can think of there is that between Slaanesh, Vampire Counts, and Norsca, there's not really a super sympathetic good guy faction in that little set of three. And, I mean, we're pushing it with this Lord pack. The Ogre Kingdom's sort of the closest thing to a good guy faction out of these three. And I think that matters a lot to some people, more than you would often think. There's a lot of people that I don't think play bad guys, or at least won't buy DLC for good guys deliberately, or bad guys deliberately.
Vampire Count fans, don't worry.
But they say, I'll, not to sit here for too long dissecting one thing, but he did say the Warhammer world is our oyster, we can touch so much of that content. No, you're really limited by how much Games Workshop is willing to do themselves. I would certainly think by what they've said going off of it so far. So, stuff like Nippon, Koresh, and would not be on the table. And I don't, like I said earlier, I think that the modders are perfectly willing to step up to the plate on that, and so far, modders have been stepping up to the plate on Nippon and Koresh. Those mods are both still a ways off from release. Koresh probably like a year or more. But they're coming, and they look quite good. And I don't know that Games Workshop's writers would necessarily handle it with the same subtlety and gameplay variety that modders necessarily would. Because modders, on one hand, necessarily don't always have the best grasp on balance by nature. They're people doing it as a hobby. But at the same time, they are not so immediately driven by what has in the past yielded financial success, because they're not getting financial success at all from the mod. I think when you look at Kislev in Warhammer 3, there are a lot of problems there that I don't think that the big Total War Warhammer modders would have made. A lot of mistakes that they wouldn't have made. Kislev being overhauled to have this focus on ice, bears, ice, bears, ice, bears, all over the roster. The decision to just arbitrarily rebuild a major part of Kislev's lore by having them have a reformed official church with patriarchs and inquisitors and whatever nonsense, thus making Kislev's culture less interesting, because now they're just more similar to the Empire's Sigmarite church. I don't know, these are mistakes I don't see modders making. And that's not to say that I have a problem with the way Creative Assembly does things, or I think Creative Assembly is bad at handling things. I think that Games Workshop and Creative Assembly have both had bad instances of handling things with a lack of subtlety. But I have a lot of confidence in Creative Assembly's continued ability to turn out good Lord packs. And I'm sure that this Lord pack will still be quite good, even if it misses out on a couple of units I'm interested in personally. Like I said, for Greenskins, I would love to either see the Mangler Squig, the Gobba Squig, or the Forest Goblin Gigantic Spider Riders, which were never an actual unit. The Gigantic Spider was a mount for Lords and Heroes. But nonetheless, I think that it would be cool to get a Monstrous Cavalry unit for the Forest Goblins, and it'd encourage people to build more thematic armies for the Forest Goblins. But nonetheless, that's enough about me talking. Let's proceed and see if there's anything else to really hit. Norsca. Okay. So, that's not an official statement, but that is a heavy implication that the Lord pack after this will be Slaanesh, Vampire Counts, Norska. Okay. Like I said, Norska did make sense to get a high priority.
Still the lizard men. We can do something about the geomantic web. Fingers crossed, Sean.
So, and there they had the confirmation. Yes, they want to hit the geomantic web and overhaul it. I don't think we'll get another Lizardman DLC. They're just simply, they've added not only everything they could add to the Lizardmen, they've also added far more than was on the tabletop to the Lizardmen. And I'm fine with that. I think the Lizardmen roster is very cool. But I don't see them doing another DLC. I can see them overhauling the Lizardmen at least partially, just as a free update. But for the next couple updates, I see it being more likely that they overhaul the races that are in the DLCs. With this upcoming DLC, I think it's inevitable that Khorne, Greenskins, and Ogre Kingdoms will all get some touching up. Ogre Kingdoms are in a state where a lot of people are not happy with them. They'll probably get buffed in a couple regards. Khorne, difficult to say. I think Khorne's campaign is actually in a pretty good position. It feels properly corny. Greenskins, I personally would like to see a little bit more depth added there rather than the wall mechanic as it is now, which is just get double the size of armies, kill somebody, get a big buff, move on, kill somebody again, and just once you get the steam train rolling, it doesn't stop. I don't know, that personally isn't my style, but then again, not all the races in the game have to be to my style. I'll still play some Greenskin Legendary Lords. I just would prefer to see campaign mechanics that are a little bit more to my liking. And the next update, the next big update, the next DLC update after that, if it would be hypothetically, let's say, Norska, Vampire Counts, and Slaanesh, which it might not be. I think some people will get mad if they specifically name-dropped Norska, Vampire Counts, and Slaanesh here, and it's not Norska, Vampire Counts, and Slaanesh in the next DLC. There's going to be some people that get pretty upset. But if we assume that it will be, Norska and Vampire Counts both need big overhauls. Well, Norska, I think, needs a refresh. And perhaps a look over of their campaign mechanics. There's an idea in my head of what I want Norska to be, which is, I think that Norska in its current state is kind of Warriors of Chaos Jr. Because when Warhammer 1 came around, the Warriors of Chaos were in a pretty bad state, and Kriv simply knew they weren't going to be able to touch them until Warhammer 3, really, because they were waiting on the demons to come out. So, Norska kind of felt like a band-aid on the situation. A much more playable, much more interesting version of Chaos Warriors. But now that the Chaos Warriors are what they were meant to be to begin with, and Norska sat there as basically just being naked Chaos Warriors out in the snow, that's a lot less interesting. I personally would love to see Norska be overhauled to be a bit more human and a bit more sane by the standards of Chaos, but I don't see that happening. Games Workshop themselves in the later editions of Warhammer, it seemed to me, kind of toned down any humanizing aspect to the Chaos Worshipping tribes, and wanted to make them more so just naked Chaos Barbarians in the snow. And I don't see Kriv Assembly, rather, bucking that trend. But nonetheless, they need definitely an overhaul, because they're not as great as they could be. Vampire Counts needed some serious changes, because the Bloodlines mechanic as it exists in game is pretty nothing. It is do what you would ordinarily do, go out and kill factions, and get rewarded with special lords. And you can get blood kisses for assassinating heroes, and you can get blood kisses for vassalizing factions, but people, generally speaking, won't make a big campaign-changing decision like vassalizing for a single blood kiss. And it might be worth more than a single blood kiss, I don't remember. Either way, Vampire Counts here are going to need some overhauling. Let's proceed.
We'll see. But yeah, legacy content is super important. So if we haven't done anything in a while, just know it's in our plans. We've got a long, journey ahead of us. Lots of exciting content to add to the game.
If it exists, we would love to make it.
Oh, absolutely. Hopefully one day we'll
If it exists, we'd love to make it. And that's...
But let's see.
Halflings, okay.
I know you'd make everything if you could.
I don't see them doing a halflings race. Though that would be way more funny than a Dogs of War race. My preference, like I said with Dogs of War, is a unit pack for all the existing races as mercenaries, similar to past Total Wars, rather than an independent race of their own. But there's a decent chance we get the Dogs of War as an independent race of their own.
If I could, yeah.
No
For
chaos
everyone.
guilt left behind.
Yep, there you go. And you touched on it here as well, and we mentioned it in the development update that we did before. But looking back at like the legacy content and the game as it currently is as well, I know there's a want to kind of freshen up what's already there. I don't know, Sean, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the kind of expectations can be there?
Yeah, I can work on that one for you. So yeah, so far we've only really done bug fixing in the interim patches between our .0s. So going up to 6.0, we're planning to bring in some smaller additions as well. So things
There
that
was
you
a
would normally see.
there was an air of caution to planning, which it doesn't matter how cautious you are when you say that sort of thing in these videos. People have an expectation formed as soon as the words exit your lips. And people are going to be upset if they don't see any major gameplay changes between updates 5.1 or 5.2 or whatever and 6.0 or whatever. Is it 6.0 is the next update? I don't remember. I thought 5.0 or 5.1 was the one that just released yesterday with all the changes to custom battles and multiplayer battles. Yeah, these are not the sort of things I prioritize in my mind about Total War Warhammer. Not the information that gets put at the top of the pile. But either way, if people don't see any gameplay changes between big updates, they're now going to look back at this video and get mad. So, it's another thing to be careful about.
Patch, including things such as like the reworks that you might expect to come with a big .0 drop, such as like the cults. So we're going to take a look at them, and then even beyond rework.
Cult rework makes a lot of sense. The cult rework, the cults as they exist in the game now. Warhammer 3, it's been said before that Warhammer 3 felt like it had been made by the Warhammer 1 launch team in a lot of ways. That they were aiming for more subtle campaign mechanics and trying to double down a bit more on the corruption system, which is notoriously kind of wonky, so that was an interesting choice. And doubling down on random number, the RNG, the random number game, to handle a lot of mechanics. Which I personally really don't like. I still feel that one of the most awkward and unpleasant mechanics in this game in every regard are heroes. They're awkward to use because it's so reliant on RNG. And they're awkward to have used on you because the AI at a certain point in the campaign loves to throw them around in unreasonable numbers and just harass your armies endlessly. So I don't like the hero mechanics as they are. I don't know if that I see them getting changed, though. As Total War Warhammer, by this point, is still kind of built around the Rome 2 way of handling agents. And when my favorite way of handling agents is Three Kingdoms, where they're not on the campaign map at all, and you have to handle them through another set of UI. And my memory is that Three Kingdoms also doesn't have RNG reliance with their agents. It is more about time that it takes for them to complete their action than it is about the chances of success. But my memory is a bit foggy. It's been probably... Well, I would have played through Three Kingdoms during COVID, so that'd have been 3 years ago, probably. Time flies. Nonetheless, yeah, that is... The cult mechanic as it exists is RNG reliant. It is corruption reliant. Corruption system is better than it was in Warhammer 2. It just being a flat percentage, it can go from 0 to 100, depending on your input, is a lot more tolerable than it was in Warhammer 2, whereas this weird alien system where there's always 100% of some kind of corruption, but it just varied depending on the influences right then and there. It was iffy. On top of that, though, the RNG systems, it just being random chance every turn in a high corruption area, whether or not you get cults, is really awkward. And on top of that, the fact that it applies globally for whichever faction is controlled by the player is really awkward, because we've all had those instances where we started a Chaos campaign as, you know, Khorne or Nurgle or Slaanesh or Tzeentch, one of the four that get cults, and you're just going about your day, you know, going about your turns, playing on through, and you just get abruptly notified that you now have a cult somewhere on the other side of the planet, because you're playing, let's say, you're playing Nakari, and abruptly the Slanesh cult way over in the Chaos Wastes north of, I don't know, Nagaroth, has had such corruption that they've just got cult buildings spawning up, and now you get them. It's nice to get that free gift, but it's awkward for the player to be rewarded for something they had nothing to do with. So, yeah, curious about a cult rework.
We might try and add some new content to create some new, fresh experiences that, again, you would usually be waiting for us to drop a DLC, but we want to try and give all of the races a little bit of love if we can. And we've obviously said it's ogres, Khorne, and orcs and goblins for this one, but you know we know everyone's got their favourite, and we want to try and touch.
Everyone does have their favorite, and it's usually the Empire.
So you're saying we're not just adding to the new races that are coming with the new DLC, but also to previous ones scattered here and there?
Exactly. And I think the big thing is feedback. So if if you say you're missing something and you'd love to see something, we will try to.
They could, hypothetically, with the Geomantic Web, add a Lizardman free LC Legendary Lord.
We strive to hit.
Yeah.
Maybe
we enjoy creating
Teto Echo?
reworking some of the old. We've been doing this for quite some time now, and
I mean, if the Lizardmen are already at 7 Legendary Lords, if they add another Legendary Lord for the Lizardmen, then the Lizardmen will just be at par with the Warriors of Chaos, who are currently the ones with the most Legendary Lords. With that said, if we have another race with 8 Legendary Lords, that's going to look even more goofy for Norska with their 2 Legendary Lords. Or for the Beastmen, who are probably never going to rise above 4 Legendary Lords. And I can't see any of the Monogod factions getting above 4 Legendary Lords. Especially Slanesh, because as soon as they add another Legendary Lord for Slanesh, they've just about run out of options, at least from the main army book. They'd have to start digging through White Dwarf.
Position where we can go back and reimagine things, improve things, is, you know, all thanks to you. In supporting the game. So
lot of trying to praise the fans and asking the fans to maybe calm down here.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that's.
And saying that the fan discourse is good and healthy. And
that stuff's coming down the line, so
Win-win.
I'm going to expect to.
there's definitely a lot here of trying to deal with the criticism and hysteria that has been going on a lot in the Total War community as of late for the past few months. Or, well, half a year, really.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty more to do, plenty more skulls to be reaped, lots of meat to be taken, and some big wars to be generated. So we're looking at the back end of the year.
Back into the year. Okay, so it is.
They take a long time to make sure we hit that right quality.
So it's a ways off. The reason they're talking about it now is to nip in the bud the bizarre insanity of the weird Cathay DLC rumors. Though the fact that it's taking them so long is only going to still be used by the weird Cathay rumor monger types, and they'll say that this is a pivot. I can already see that in my head, them saying that, you know, that, oh no, the Cathay rumors were totally correct, they've only just now pivoted to try and match our criticism. No. Some people are just insane and just really want to be mad.
Go a long period where it can feel stagnant, and that's why we're looking to do these reworks and these additional contents in the interim.
Thank you for joining us for our Total War Warhammer.
Okay, so that's going to be the end of it.
In terms of our next communications, we're going to be looking at coming back to you hopefully around late summer with an update on what we're working on. In the meantime, keep coming to us with your feedback, letting us know what your thoughts on, especially.
So I assume there will be a trailer at some point. It's going to be weird for them to do a trailer when we know all 3 of the Legendary Lords, as well as
fun and informative for you as we can.
A couple of the units that it comes with.
From all of us here at CA and the Total War team,
they might do more of these videos and simply slowly over time reveal more units. Suppose that could be fine. But yeah, that was quite odd. I definitely appreciate the efforts at transparency. And I appreciate them just outright saying the next Lord Pack isn't coming until later this year, so don't get your hopes up. So I'm glad about all that. I definitely find it odd that the video was in many ways... rings to me of trying to cover for fan base hysteria. And there's been a degree of fan base hysteria going on, at least since Shadows of Change's announcement. On some level, just since Warhammer 3's launch to begin with. And, you know, I don't know how much necessarily this video is going to be too effective in controlling that. But I do appreciate the effort. Now, as for what all they said, if they want to release another big update before the next Lord Pack, similar to what they released just yesterday, with all those changes to custom battles and multiplayer battles, then that would be very cool. And to be honest, that's a lot of what I'd like to see with Warhammer 3 at this point. Beyond actual new content, it's just simply, I don't know, little quality of life features. Then again, in game dev, I suppose nothing is really that little, is it? It always has expanding effects outwards. Don't know what kind of visual language I'm trying to go through with these hand signals here. I think you get it. So, I definitely think it's all good news. Definitely curious to see where things go forward. And I guess I could reiterate again with the Halfling tease. Like, I prefer Dogs of War as a unit pack. I prefer if I can recruit the Halfling Hot Pot Catapult as the Empire of Bretonia if I want. But I don't have the final say here, do I? I don't have any say, do I? Either way, yeah, other than the only bit for what they talked about with the new DLC that I don't like is Gorbad. I don't like Gorbad Ironclaw as the Legendary Lord. I don't know that I ever will. I find him bland. I think out of the options they had in front of him, I think he was the most boring answer. At the same time, I know the big, beefy orcs that kick lots of ass sell DLCs. That generally speaking, people have an idea in their head of what the greenskin should be, and it's majority orc and not so much goblin. And personally, I lean much more on the goblin side. So I'm a bit sad we didn't get a Forest Goblin Legendary Lord. Then again, I suppose that doesn't interfere with a couple mods anyway. So, yeah, there was that to be thankful for, I suppose. Nonetheless, at risk of rambling even further, I better go ahead and stop this video. So, this will be the first upload to the channel. And I would like to talk a lot more about Total War in the coming months. So, I'll see you then.